Hey everybody, so today I'm talking about the practice of pulling a daily tarot card, which is pretty much the first part of the Alchemical Journal morning practice. We write the date and then we pull our tarot card, and as I mentioned, I like to shuffle my cards and say Hermes, Thoth, Odin, Mercury. Sometimes I get into calling him by a long stream of names. Please show me what today brings. And then I pull a card. So this practice is absolutely fascinating. I really think that it is the best way to get to know the tarot. Because obviously, meditating with the tarot is great. Studying books about the tarot is great. But I think the practice of pulling a daily card, noticing what happens in that day, making connections with the card is really the best way to get an intimate sense of what is the archetype, what does it carry with it? What events are associated with it? What sort of insights and revelations are associated with it? So, pulling the tarot card is just the first part of it. Then the rest of the practice is really throughout the day is thinking about the card that you pulled and noticing what's going on around you and wondering, what does this mean? How does this relate to the card that I pulled today? Does it relate? Is it completely unrelated? And there's certainly been days when I, pulled something like, let's say the Princess of Pentacles. And court cards are tough, and as I don't always know what it means. I'm like, well, what happened today that was especially Princessy of Pentacles? I'm not sure, but that's what I pulled. So there's days like that. And then there's days when, wow, it can just pull together such a web of magic when you start to realize, oh my goodness, I pulled this card this morning, and then as the day unfolded, I got this deep initiation that was directly connected to the card that I pulled. So I like to think that the initiation happens every day. It's just sometimes I'm not that perceptive. And there's also, I don't know if it's an objection or just a point that could be raised that, hey, aren't you more likely to find things that resonate with this card if you are looking for them? The answer is yes. There is, a perceptual bias that comes up, but my answer would be that that's a fantastic thing when you're working with a rich, complete set of symbols that serve as an initiatory gateway into the deeper realms of the soul, of the spirit, which the tarot absolutely is. Because as you are thinking about and pondering the meanings and looking for associations and rhymes with it, those symbols guide you to really deep, beautiful things. So in some ways, it's a receptive practice of divination where you're just, receiving and noticing. And in other ways, it is an active practice of magic where you're saying, hey, I want to learn about this mystery. I want to have experiences and make connections that take me more deeply into a magical experience of life. So here, I'll give a little bit of an example. Yesterday, I pulled the Prince of Wands as my card. And as I said, sometimes I struggle with the interpretation of court cards. Just because I'm like, well, I don't know, it's a family of wands. What does it mean? But we could get into a finer points discussion of the court cards another time, but there it was, the Prince of Wands, this beautiful fiery card. I used the Thoth deck. And again, maybe a little bit later today or in another episode, I could talk about why specifically I use the Thoth deck, but I do. So there it is, the Prince of Wands. Okay, so then I'm going about my day, and I did a Hermes spell yesterday evening as part of my wealth membership group. We're all doing a Hermes spell this month. So I did this spell. And then I started having conversations with my husband, Taya, and this experience where we are watching the show Strange Angel, which is about Jack Parsons, one of my magical heroes. And Taya starts telling me basically this fantastic realization he's had about how Jack Parsons really was an elemental angel of fire, in that he so deeply studied the powers, the chemistry of fire with his rocket fuel research, and he meditated on it, and he, had such a deep imagination, and he did all this very fiery, intense sex magic, that he actually succeeded in becoming a channel of the elemental angel of fire on Earth, and brought through this amazing new breakthrough. He invented the rocket fuel that made it possible for us to go to the moon. So that kind of huge thing, and of course he created a lasting legacy where there's books about him, there's this awesome TV show. He made himself a legend through aligning himself very deeply with the fundamental elemental principle of fire and explosions. And then Taya was telling me about how he noticed he's an initiate in Palo Mayombe, and in Palo Mayombe ceremonies, sorcerers use gunpowder to create explosions over sigils with their ritual fires while they're doing magic. And there's something, about that explosive gunpowder that sets up a fascinating and very intense set of meanings and rhymes that the universe later synchronously connects with. And then there's powerful changes that rhyme with that powerful explosion. And so that's also sort of what the purpose of lighting candles in ceremonial magic serves. It's the creation of fire has something to do with opening room for something new to come in. But gunpowder is sort of a cooler version of that than lighting a candle, and arguably Jack Parsons' rocket fuel experiments even cooler. So Taya was talking to me about this and talking about how he was doing a Palo Mayombe ritual a while ago, more than a year ago, when I was in the Amazon in Peru. And he was doing this ritual, and he accidentally spilled some lighter fluid into his ritual fire, and this giant fire leaped out. And he had all of these intense memories of his recent past lives while he was sort of in a state of shock or being jarred by this roaring flame that jumped up that unexpectedly. And fascinatingly, around that time in Peru, I was struck by lightning. There was a lightning storm that hit the ayahuasca retreat center where I was staying, and luckily it grounded into the ground first, but I was sitting at the ground, and so I felt the shock wave of it. So I wasn't directly hit by lightning, but rather indirectly, but I've still felt it. And so all of these intense things, so lightning, roaring flames, big, intense heat and light. I'm struggling to sort of put into a linear narrative this web of meaning that hit me last night, but I think I got a transmission about the importance of fire in magical workings, fire, explosions, and how it connects to desire and creativity and to immortality, to, recollections of larger, deeper things. Funny little side note, I think sometimes when I talk about, remembering past lives, that can sound like a sort of silly new age thing. I don't think it's silly at all in the sense of, think about the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree. Part of what happened to him when he was doing that was he remembered all of his past lives. That was part of his enlightenment, was understanding his full journey and understanding his immortality. So anyways, I do think it can be part of a really important self-remembering, understanding of what's really going on, to have these recollections of experiences outside of the current lifetime. Anyways, that was a little side note. Point being, it was just such a Prince of Wands transmission that came in last night through this conversation with Taya, and through making these connections, and through watching our Strange Angel show. Highly recommend. So if I hadn't pulled the Prince of Wands, maybe we still would have had that really cool conversation, but it wouldn't have hit me with such a depth as it did, as when I realized, oh my gosh, I pulled the Prince of Wands today, and I'm getting this deep Prince of Wands instruction about magic. Wow, how fascinating. It's sort of, so the tarot card pull added another layer to that synchronous web that helps draw my attention to it and helps me understand the importance of it. And furthermore, I think it helped that I did a Hermes ritual last night. Of course, Hermes, as we've mentioned, Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes Thoth, being very important god of magic, consciousness, meaning, perception, language, alchemy. So I think that primed me and probably made it all the more amazing, but just also definitely a situation where pulling a tarot card of the day had significance. So then, of course, I need to record these associations in my Alchemical Journal. That's part of the practice. I need to write down what happened, because it's very interesting. Magic, sort of like nighttime dreams, the conscious mind, the ordinary ego, your ordinary interior monologue, will tend to very readily dismiss and forget about even, amazing, intense synchronicities or teachings that are revealed to you, just because it's trying to maintain a sort of ordinary homeostasis, status quo. And so part of what the Alchemical Journal does is it helps us to fight against that forgetting function, that function that just wants us to perceive everything as ordinary and normal. And it helps us remember the actual strange journeys that we've opened up and that we're going on with our magic. And this becomes so important over time. So, gradually you can start reading back over your journal, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, the process of recollection and looking back. You'll sit down one day and you read back over 2 or 3 months, or maybe you sit down one day and you pick up an alchemical journal that you kept 3 years ago, and you kind of totally forgot what was happening in that season, but you read the journal and you're like, whoa. You get this deep experience of non-linear time, this experience of being connected with yourself in a whole different way, where you're realizing things that were important to you, things that were being revealed to you at the moment in the past that you recorded in your alchemical journal, have deep significance for you right now in the present, and spur these other connections and spur new, creative pathways and lines of inspiration that drive you in directions that are more connected and more coherent than they would be if you had not taken the effort, done the work of keeping this alchemical journal. You just wouldn't have the same kind of coherent, sort of like what it's like? It's like in the labyrinth, the Minotaur's labyrinth, having a thread. You tie, so you can get your way out of the labyrinth, you tie a string at the entrance, and then you, as you go through the labyrinth, you unroll the string so you can follow the string back out again, so you can know where you've been, you can trace your journey, you can go deep, 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 and then come back to the surface and bring something with you instead of getting hopelessly lost. So that's one of the amazing functions that I think the Alchemical Journal serves for us, is it's like this string that we can do deep dives with and can follow back and can find our way through this twisting, shifting experience of life that again involves so much forgetfulness. And of course, some of the forgetfulness that we have as humans is wonderful. It lets us be more present and feel more free in some ways. And then some of the forgetfulness that we have is just, ignorance. It's just like the forces of inertia and ignorance that are always kind of acting upon us and trying to get us to be more passive or just going along with the natural process of decay. Something that I think is interesting is that at various times, alchemy has been called the work against nature. And that sounds kind of scandalous on the surface, right? Like, against nature. Why would you want to go against nature? Nature is so wonderful. But it's the work against nature in the sense that it's a work that's about like going beyond sort of mere animal comfort or creature comfort or physical instinct. Our instinct is just to be fed and warm and cuddled and procreating and safe, which is all wonderful. But there's, in humans, there's also something else going on. Like, we're animals, and we're also, we also seem to have some far out bits of angels and stars and very strange things in us too. So we're, as humans, we're always in this interesting struggle to become more awake, more lucid, more coherent and perceptive within daily life. So anyways, that's a little bit about the daily practice of pulling a tarot card and why it can be so cool. So I highly recommend that you do it. I highly recommend that you start experimenting with keeping an alchemical journal in general and start experiencing this level of learning, this level of being taught, not by me, not by some author of a book, but being taught by your own direct experience what a tarot card means. And remember, every tarot card is an arcana, which means it's a mystery. And the more that we work towards, the more we go towards the mystery, the more we go towards the unknown, the uncertain, the more fun we have. So I guess that's all I'll say for today. Have a wonderful day.